Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. And welcome to another edition of The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai. And today we're discussing the tragedy, obviously, at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minnesota. It's left so many grieving, but they're going to do a deep dive into this. So without further ado, Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Thank you so much, Keith. We're so glad to be here for The Next Right Thing, but this is a difficult topic today, obviously, because it has stirred up a lot of emotions on all sides. And so Adam and I are going to try to unpack this in a way that we do what we think best, especially on the show, The Spirit World, right? Where we're constantly relating it to our spiritual life and how the demons could be possibly part of the equation. Also, how we could have a ton of heavenly assistance during these most tragic times. So, Adam, why don't you start and we'll go back and forth.
Okay, so yeah, obviously this is a hard thing to talk about. Clearly feel terrible and pray for the families. You know, the kids, from a spiritual perspective, hopefully they were already in a great state and are already in heaven. You know, if they had some sin for purgatory, hopefully that'll be resolved quickly. I'm sure a lot of people are praying for them. Pray for the other kids that were there. And then all the kids around that are now increasingly scared or shaken by this in terms of, you know, a shooting and happening in a church and all of that. It makes you think, you know, when you go to church yourself, that's now becomes something that's in the back of your mind. But anyway, so pray for everybody involved, including the shooter, to pray for him that, you know, if he's in purgatory, that he find mercy in the end. I'm not saying it was in any way good what he did, but we need to pray for every soul and leave that justice up to God. On the spiritual side of things, you know, Deb, I've worked with a number of murderers in prison, you know, working in psychological services. I worked with serial killers. I worked with all kinds of people that have done, you know, things, and people that were involved in black magic and also did some of these things. So, you know, looking at the letter that he wrote to his family, there's a 4-page letter that some news outlets have posted pictures of. I mean, from my perspective, from what I'm seeing, at least here, I haven't looked at his journals. I don't see direct indication that you know, he was possessed or he was playing around with black magic or that this was demonic. I've looked at the journals from shooters that were involved in real Satanism and, you know, had Satanist paraphernalia. And in their journals, it was seemed to be sincere. This kid had all kinds of symbols on his guns and his magazines and his equipment there. But it seemed like he was doing everything that could be shocking. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like specifically satanic or demonic. It was more like every possible way to be shocking, like the names of other killers and things like that. So, I don't know, Deb, from my perspective, this feels like, from reading this and thinking about what he did and how clear-minded he was from reading this letter, that, yeah, this was just a very disturbed person.
He was disturbed,
very
mentally.
disturbed.
Yeah. But what he did, that's why people are saying on social media it was demonic, is what he did, because how horrific it was. So we can we can understand that, absolutely. But to start you know, saying that somehow he was like you said, possessed or taken over in that capacity. But here's the thing that I find so disturbing about this. And you know, Adam, you know how I feel about this. I cannot stand labels. I don't like labels. I think when we label people, we put people in a box and there's no way out, and we just, you know, make a determination about them, and that's it, right? And I'm not big on labels at all for that reason, because I don't think it leaves room for growth. And so we have this world we live in where there's such a stigma around mental illness still. Okay, there's all sorts of things that are happening where people are searching and seeking help and not getting it because either people are going to the wrong authorities for it, or the wrong medical professionals, or a quick fix is drugs to somehow control it or whatever, without the help and the energy that it takes to really help somebody who is mentally disturbed. Here's what gets me. There are kids that went to school with him in his elementary school days that said there was clear red flags that he was disturbed. So the kid had an issue early on. I'm not blaming the parents. I'm not blaming the teachers. I'm not blaming the doctors. And I'm not blaming the authorities. What I'm saying is I think it could be a combination of all of the above, because here's the problem. If he was showing red flags back then, what did people think? He was going to grow out of it? I mean, that just, to me, that is the disturbing part, is when parents have the not my kid syndrome, right? It's, not, my kid could never do that. That, I think that is very dangerous. And I think if we need to be not so much worried about how we're going to be labeled or the stigma that's around mental illness, we've got to get people help early on, and proper help, and a lot of attention throughout all of their years, until they settle into a place where they can be on their own and feel productive, feel valued, feel, cared for and loved. Because clearly this kid was off. There's no doubt about it. When you read everything, like you said, he was doing the shock value stuff. He was, and then he had trans regret that no one wants to talk about, because that's a whole nother thing, because that opens up a whole can of worms, because people are like, oh, we can't go there. I mean, this is ridiculous. The kid, he was showing clear signs that he was troubled. And somehow he fell through the cracks. Now, believe me, I'm not on his side at all. I think what he did was terrible. And then, dying by suicide, in my opinion, it just was a horrible ending for him, because there was, no way he could repair this then. So, the whole thing is tragic. But like you said, there was beautiful heroism that came out of what happened at Annunciation Parish and school. I mean, it was beautiful how kids really, clung to their faith and acted in very virtuous and beautiful ways. So, I mean, that was a beautiful thing. But there's no way around this without peeling back the layers, Adam. What do you say to that with your mental health background? I mean, it bothers me that they had these red flags, and they let this kid get all the way to 23 years old and purchase 3 guns.
Yeah. So, so with a lot of mental illness, we don't know exactly what was going on with his brain, with his hormones, meaning there was some kind of developmental thing that was showing early on in childhood. Mm-hmm. With a lot of it does slowly get worse over time. Not every mental illness, but the brain-based ones often slowly get worse over time. Now, he was 23, which means his brain was basically finished maturing. Mm-hmm. He had just reached kind of being mature in terms of his biology and his brain. And he was clear-minded from reading the letter, and he had also been thinking about this for years. And you hear that, particularly, I'm not saying he was a serial killer, but you hear that from serial killers a lot. I've worked with a number of them. They'll have the fantasy of doing something
for a long time.
For a long time,
right.
Usually since childhood, maybe not early childhood, but since childhood, and they will think about it often for more than a decade, and then finally do it, and then it becomes an obsession and it repeats. Mm-hmm. So I don't think this is so much about hormones that he was taking or and then terminated or whatever was going on. I don't know the details of that. It seems like his brain was already troubled from very early on. Now, piling on other things on top of that, of course, doesn't help. If the brain is troubled and you increase stress or you tweak the hormones in the body and things like that, the whole system can become thrown more out of balance. But it seems to me that this was well premeditated. He was clear-minded when he wrote the letter to his parents. And he had 2 well-developed sides of himself, at least. He was, in the letter, he was saying he loved his parents. He was sorry. He said, you haven't failed. You raised me right. He clearly understood all of those things, but on the other side, he describes being very depressed and feeling, like he was dying of cancer. He thought the vaping and whatnot, he just kind of assumed, I think,
because he worked at a cannabis
cancer.
dispensary.
Yeah, okay. And so, from his perspective, he thought he was dying or he was heading towards being, a cancer
Right.
patient in a hospital.
Right.
That doesn't justify anything, but he's also very depressed.
Well, what
But
about
he's
the whole trans
clear-minded.
regret? Yeah, but what about the whole trans regret
Yeah,
thing?
well, yeah, that's part of it. But it's odd. There's also a piece missing in his thinking. Like, he has insight into the damage he's going to do to the victims, to their families, to his own family with the scandal. He has insight into all those things. But he says he feels helpless to not do it. So it almost like, and you see this sometimes again more with serial killers, the fantasy is played over so many times in their mind that at some point they feel like they have to do it for real.
Right.
And in that sense, they can feel helpless to not finally do it.
Yeah.
There could have been a mechanism like that going on, but I don't know because we don't have enough data.
Well, let me ask you a question, because we're getting comments coming in from the chat group, and I agree. I've seen it too on social media. There are some priests going out there saying that they feel he was possessed. I mean, it's really easy to just always blame this on the devil. What he did, I think, was very demonic, absolutely. But it's very easy to do that, and then we're not addressing the real the cause of things, which is a disturbance in his brain. I mean, severe mental illness. I mean, this is a real problem, Adam, wouldn't you say? If we just always say, "Oh, they're possessed," and we just rule it, and we rule it as that.
Well, as we've been talking about, I think there's tons of evidence that his brain was troubled from an early age.
Right.
So, and again, I've read the journals of mass shooters who were involved in real black magic. Not I bought a book at the mall, but real stuff. And there it's pretty clear to me, after 20 years of work in this area with all this, including some occult crime stuff, that they were possessed. In this case, I think it's mental illness, to be honest.
I totally agree.
I think the religious angle is just, I don't know, that's just where his mind went. But
Right.
I don't see signs of possession.
Okay, so let's hold it there, and then I'm going to share with you a real life story that happened to us when my kids were growing up, and you tell me if we were right or wrong about this. So let's hold it there. Send it to Keith for some important announcements.
Yes, and the important announcement, don't go anywhere. This is a really interesting conversation, and I think we're all going to learn a lot from it. So don't go anywhere. We'll take a quick break, and on the other side, we're continuing with Debbie and Adam right here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. The goal of fasting from anything, whether food or other pleasures, is to subordinate our flesh to our will. Basically, we need to make ourselves do things we do not want to do. And the more that we do this, the less selfish and less self-centered we become. We all need to continue to work on this muscle in order to develop its strength. Parents of young children, take note. Nothing so naturally helps develop this muscle like children.
Your children are cute, endearing, compelling little crosses made especially for you. You know, sometimes it's easier to handle a cross we choose ourselves, like I will get up at 4:30 every morning. It's harder to handle crosses we don't choose, like my 2-year-old randomly wakes me up at 4:30. It's important for parents to keep in mind that some subordination of the will is naturally baked into family life. Embrace those moments and don't underestimate them as opportunities for fasting put right in front of you.
Visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
This program is sponsored in part by St. Candles. Founded by a music executive to comfort a friend diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, the St. Candle collection has grown to more than 25 candles. Each modern candle is handmade with a prayer coin inside and dedicated to a patron saint. St. Raphael for healing, St. Philomena for children, St. Anthony of Padua, and many more as well. To see what St. Candles are available, visit stcandles.com.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. And welcome back to the final segment of this morning's The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai, all talking about the tragedy at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minnesota. But without further ado, take it away, Debbie.
Thanks, Keith. You got me thinking about this, too, when I heard the promos on the break. Adam, our class starts tonight. Angels and Demons starts tonight. I don't know if there's still a chance for people to get in. So all you procrastinators who waited to the last minute, if you want to check out grnonline.com/academy, join the class. We have, I think, almost 40 students. We are really going to do a deep dive into Angels and Demons. So please join us if you can still get into the class. So just go online, and it's available to anybody around the world. So it starts tonight. And there's other classes there too that there's still open registration. Okay, so Adam, here's the story. And nobody knows who this family is, so I'm just speaking generally, but this is where, when my kids were little, this is what happened in the town that we lived in. There was a family that was very active in the church, very active in the Catholic Church. Okay, and so there's so many similarities when I see this story about this mother who worked in the church, and then there was a divorce, and the kid was depressed, and the kid was, acting out, doing all these things, and so there's so many similarities. Now this situation didn't go to the extreme like this boy did with shooting everyone, but I just wanted to share with you, when my kids were little, they played with other kids in the neighborhood all the time. So we got to know the families very well. And this family was active in the church. And their son was, we noticed early on, sweet kid, could be so sweet. Just like you said that this boy had two sides to him, very clear-headed on one side, talking to his parents, and then very dark on the other side, having this manifesto and everything about killing and hating people, right? This kid had those same two sides. We all saw it as neighbors, all of us. We saw the red flags, and we would go to the parents continuously as friends. You have a problem here. There's a problem here. Oh no, not my kid. Oh no, he's a sweetheart. Oh no, he comes to church. Oh no, he's darling. You got to see the sweet side of him. Okay, well, we all tried to see the sweet side of him. And when this young boy grew up to be a young man, he committed a felony and ended up in prison. Okay? And everybody in the neighborhood knew it. It all was going in that direction. And and honestly, I'm not blaming the parents, and I'm not blaming the school. The administration that tried to help this kid. I'm not blaming the doctors that tried to help this kid, because they put him on medication too when he was a teenager. I'm not blaming anybody, but what I'm saying is the red flags were there. And it was way back when, you're talking 25 years ago, and people were still scared to say anything. Now, fast forward to today, where, oh my goodness, you better not say anything, because that would be the wrong thing to do. We have to affirm everything in this world. Anytime somebody says, they're a bird or something, oh, affirm it, whatever anybody's truth is. I mean, it really is gotten to the point where it's really, in my opinion, insane. I mean, so when you can see something with your own eyes, and yet everyone else is trying to just downplay it, and then things like this happen, I mean, are we really going to be shocked? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not shocked. What do you say to that?
Well, if you look at the juvenile system in terms of corrections and kids that end up in the juvie system, there are just tons and tons of people. I'm not saying it's super common, but it definitely happens where, by the time kids are approaching 18, there's some that they're committing felonies, they're committing very serious crimes. And it's some of the most challenging work in all of corrections is working in juvie, because, it's hard on everybody. And it's also hard on the young people that end up doing these crimes. And it definitely can happen. Yeah, to be dismissive and say, well, my gut's telling me, and also here's this list of things we've seen and heard from this person that make us concerned. You don't want to just dismiss that. I'm not saying go around and round people up and, lock them up preemptively or something.
Right.
You can't do that. But get them some help, try to, find out what's going on. And sometimes I think I know resources are always limited, but getting some help from somebody who's had experience with kids that have ended up troubled and doing, serious crimes. Because there's a big difference between regular kind of family community work in terms of mental health services and somebody who's worked with the more seriously disturbed kids that end up doing serious crimes and end up living, a life in prisons. It's tough, Deb. There's no easy solution.
But okay, there's no easy solution. Let me ask you this question, though. Don't you think when the signs are there that somebody is depressed, they feel alone, they feel isolated, alienated, the last thing you should do is leave them alone so they spend more time in their head? I mean, I don't understand it. It's like sometimes people push these depressed people away when these people really need to be watched and monitored. They really should not be alone. I mean, I'm going back to the situation, what happened when my kids were little. They wanted this young man to grow up quickly and get out of the house. They were tired of dealing with him. Okay, that was the bottom line. And so when he ended up on his own, then he committed the crime. I mean, I just don't understand it. I don't know. It frustrates me because then everybody's like so shocked. Like, how could this happen? Well, I mean, clearly he was demonstrating that he was depressed. He supposedly he had this trans regret. He hated everyone around him. He was just, I think some significant partner dumped him or whatever, so he felt hurt there. His parents were divorced. I mean, I'm not saying divorce is the cause of it, but divorce, can be shocking to kids. I mean, and then he had this depression. He had all these dark thoughts. I mean, why are we sitting here going, wow, this is so shocking?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk about details, but I'm thinking of it. I've worked on cases where young people in their teens, early-ish teens, were so bad that the parents were scared of them, literally scared for their lives.
Yep.
One situation, they found knives and axes and weapons stashed away and stored under the bed, and disturbing stuff in journals. And it was they were so sure something was going to happen, they thought it very well could be them. You have to... Yeah, again, I wish there was an easy solution because, there's no guarantee that everybody's going to have a well-developed brain. Like we know now that certain types of killers and serial killers literally have a circuit missing in the brain. I'm not saying it makes it okay, but in terms of biological science, they have found a genetic defect where a certain circuit isn't there in terms of having empathy and understanding of, other people's feelings and the reality of other people.
Right.
So there can be very serious things going on, and it will manifest from earlier in life. That's why one of the signs of antisocial personality disorder is torturing animals when the person was a child, because the signs will be there from childhood onward.
Right.
So maybe that's one thing that we could do is go do some research on what are the signs connected with these things that are seen early in life. And, if your gut's telling you there's something about this kid that's, my gut's just telling me there's something here, maybe look into those concrete signs because, medical science has determined these signs are usually there. And if they are, take some action.
Absolutely. Well, and pray for everyone involved in this whole tragic situation. Those little kids that, there are some saints there. I'll tell you what, some beautiful, beautiful souls there at Annunciation School. All right. We'll leave it there. Lots of prayers are surrounding that whole area and everybody that's involved in it. And so let's send it back to Keith for the rest of Morning Joy.
All right. Thanks again, Debbie and Adam. And just a couple quick reminders. Don't forget to tune in from last week's episode of The Spirit World. They had so many great calls. I can't even go through them. I don't have enough time to talk all about them, but make sure to search The Spirit World or The Spirit World Podcast. And also, today is the first day of class on Debbie and Adam's course on Angels and Demons. It's at 7 p.m. Central, so there's still time to register. Just don't be late. It's grnonline.com/academy. Hey, coming up after the break, what will shape Catholic radio this fall? We got Dave's top 3 takeaways and the final push for GRN Academy before classes begin, as I mentioned. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on Morning Joy, where truth matters.